Now, earlier this week, you'd be aware that a council in Western Sydney has banned a children's book on same-sex parents in libraries. We're told by those involved, including former Mayor Steve Christo, that this was for the safety of children, that parents had contacted him distraught. Now, let me make this clear before I go on, because this is important. Any content that is sexual in nature should not be anywhere near our little kids, whether it be gay, straight, whatever. For example, the mural at the Mardi Gras a couple of years ago of a teddy bear in bondage. Completely inappropriate, and I said that publicly. Just as I called out when those types of images were used in a Balenciaga, that designer brand, advertising campaign. This book does not in any way sexualise anything. And I'm frustrated. I know I sounded it's because I am. It's not woke to reflect how real families can look in this day and age. There are kids who have two mums and there are kids who have two dads. They deserve to be able to pick up a book that reflects what their family looks like as well. This isn't a how-to manual or a recruitment drive. It isn't part of a school curriculum or being forced onto impressionable young minds. It's a kid's book that tells little Johnny or little Cindy that their family dynamic is okay if they choose to read it, that they belong. Again, I come on this show or I go on radio and explain why I hate this stuff. Not the differences of opinion or people's religious beliefs. We are all entitled to those. But the censoring, the belittling, and in my view, the offensive suggestion that just because these books exist, they are somehow harming your child. Now, my little brother is gay. It is the least interesting thing about him. He's had the same wonderful partner for a decade, he's a commercial pilot, and he's genuinely the most incredible and decent man I know. In fact, I'd hazard a guess, and I have to apologise to my two sisters in advance here, but Mick would definitely have been Dad's, a former Major General and fairly conservative Liberal senator's, favourite. I hate this stuff because I know that he will see it and be reminded again publicly that in the eyes of some, he still isn't good enough, that he doesn't belong, that the love he shares with Dan, his partner, is somehow wrong, that the very lucky kids they may have down the track will be ostracised or shamed. I speak on his behalf often, but it clearly doesn't make much of a difference, so I actually asked him to write something for me on this. His words. And I'm going to read that out for him now. I want to give a voice to him and his community on this issue, and I would love you to listen and take it in. Like many members of the LGBTQ community, I have for years watched news reports of same-sex book banning in parts of Europe and the United States, reacting with sadness and puzzlement. I was always grateful that I live in a country in which that phenomenon doesn't occur. Australia is better than that. I say is, not was, because I still believe that we are. I've read that the ban, possibly illegal, will likely be overturned. The logic appears flawed. Councilman Christo argues that this isn't about a prohibition on LGBTQ books, but instead about banning content that sexualises children. There appears to be nothing in this book that does that, and Christo himself admitted he hasn't read the title. Based on that, it's hard to not view this as a decision to ostracise and alienate a certain group. As Christo says, his constituents don't want such controversial issues going against their beliefs indoctrinated to their libraries. Since when is the role of libraries to only provide information that you agree with and that suits your own worldview? The parents in Cumberland Council have every right to raise their children according to their beliefs, but they also have a responsibility to limit that parenting to their own children. I'm sure there's media in that library that presents views and opinions that clash with mine, but I'm also certain they deserve to be there. For as long as we have been a country, we have been a people of different faiths and opinions. It's part of the fabric of modern Australian culture. We engage in banter with people at the pub wearing a different footy jersey. We hold the door open for people behind us, regardless of their religion. And we work side by side with people who vote differently. All of us have a right to our opinion. That's paramount. But none of us have the right to prevent someone from forming their own. That's un-Australian. So I'm not overly worried about access to this book in the long run, but I am worried about the younger people in this community. Being gay is one of the very few minority groups where you don't share your minority status with your family. I'm going to read that again. This is Erin here, not Mick, because this really struck me this morning. I'd never really thought about it like this. Being gay is one of the very few minority groups where you don't share your minority status with your family. You tend to shoulder the bullying and societal non-acceptance in secret and on your own from a very young age. That takes a toll. I also feel for the adult members of this community in Western Sydney, people who will drive trains with children from Cumberland Council on them, doctors and nurses who are LGBTQ who will treat these children when they get sick, soldiers that will fight to protect these children's freedoms, and officers who police the neighbourhood in this area so these kids can walk home from school safe, and they are once again being told, directly or indirectly, that they don't belong. To them, I say, I share your exhaustion.